Cast your gaze upon the entire 50 series supply. Newegg posted a photo of what we assume to be every RTX 50 GPU that exists. If you're wondering why I'm filming in here, it's to stop the voices.
The more you buy, the more you save.
As for the RTX 5090, it doesn't exist. The 5080 shouldn't, but the 5090 doesn't. This morning, 3 people on our team were focused on trying to buy RTX 5090 GPUs from multiple retailers. Jeremy, Mike, and I all had a strategy on which cards to try and buy to review, and it didn't work. Turns out we stood no chance, and neither did any of you. So we used a mix of stock trackers and just manually refreshing tons of retailers. I had a 4-monitor setup. It was beautiful, and not a single card showed up in stock. Well, one did, and then it evaporated. This is what we were met with, and also most of the internet trying to buy one. Every single site appeared to be out of stock or had to notify me for the entire launch timing for the RTX 5090. We saw the 5080 pop up in a few places, but let's be real, nobody wants that. This guy accidentally bought 2. Poor soul, and he wasn't allowed to cancel just one of them. He didn't even choose the scalper life, but it looks like the scalper life chose him. The time for public availability was 9 a.m. Eastern time, and it looks like this launch was paper at best and vapor at worst. So we're gonna dig into that today. Before that, this video is brought to you by the Antec Flux series of cases. We previously benchmarked and independently reviewed the Flux Pro case and found it to be one of the best cases we tested last year. The Flux Pro features the modern trend of wood accents while also focusing on a high airflow design. We found its performance to be among the best in our thermal testing. The case also has a number of ease of installation features to make assembly and cable management easier. Learn more at the link in the description below. The question we have is whether there was a meaningful amount of supply of RTX 5090s. The answer is no. Save you some time, but we're going to explore that answer today. We spent all morning trying to buy 5090s to review. It's because we don't work with board partners that much anymore, and we're just trying to source the stuff ourselves whenever we can. But that gave us a unique insight into what's going on, and then we crawled through the internet to find even more, and we spotted a few pre-built PCs on different SI, system integrator websites. We also saw some combo deals on Newegg where we suspect most of their inventory went to force you to buy motherboards and power supplies you don't want at the same time as the 5090s. Now, this /r/Micro Center post claims to have a tally of the total inventory for this launch by location, totaling 233 units of 5090 and 2,393 units of 5080. That's 233 units for an entire country from a major retailer across 29 stores, averaging 8 per location, plus whatever the other retailers had. Looking around, we were able to confirm several of the numbers that you're seeing in this Micro Center chart as well, so it appears to be accurate. We spoke to Wendell from Level 1 Techs this morning, and he confirmed his local store had 4 units of 5090, but a line that looked like this and went around the building. Tustin, California got 67 5090s, which sounds like a lot, except that Orange County has a population of 3.1 million people and is next to Los Angeles, which has a population of 3.8 million people. Now, of course, not all of those people are consumers of 5090s and gaming products, but if you just look at the centralized YouTuber population to that area, that blows through like 10% of the supply already. This user posted photos from the Tustin Micro Center and listed the 5090 solid for $5,500, a generous markdown from his original asking price of $6,000. Wow, that was nice. Then there's this Micro Center where people camped out. At the time of the drone shot, there were around 60 people in line. The store reportedly had 4 5090s and 43 5080s. Meanwhile, this photo from Facebook Marketplace shows a Micro Center in the background, while the user, assuming it's not just an image taken from somewhere else, is offering to sell the 5090 for $5,500, about a 2x markup. You can still see the line of people hoping to buy one in the background while this one's being scalped. There's a word for the type of person who does this. It's due. On our side of things, Jeremy on the team paid for access to this stock tracking website's premium service. It only ever popped the 5090 Founders Edition once during this launch, and it's possible it didn't see the others because they sold out that fast, but from what it was able to log, plus our rapid F5ing of everything, the Best Buy inventory was in stock for about a minute at launch, and then gone. And then back again at 9:22, and then gone, and then back again at 9:40 Eastern, and then gone. We were manually refreshing during these intervals, and both, again, Mike and I were able to click add to cart, only for it to error out after minutes of waiting. That's not us complaining about poor us, we couldn't get more 5090s, because we're fortunate enough to have been able to review them. But it stands as a point or an indicator for what users were going through. And so we went and looked around to see if other people had the same experience. And Yes, tons of Reddit users noted the same. There's post after post of people going through this. But at least that wasn't as bad as what this Twitter user shows happening, where the 5080 card was 979 British pounds, and then, after verifying being human, it became 1,184 British pounds. That's one hell of a bot checker. If human, increase price. It's actually just kind of like a microcosm for what's happening in society right now and the eventual downward spiral as we replace everything we do with AI, but the point stands. Not all stock was released at the same time. The history for the 5090 Founders Edition already shows multiple restocks, and this Reddit user claims being able to add one to cart at $9.39 and check out, which is actually when one of the restocks was. Meanwhile, in China, this retailer posted a video showing the RTX 5090D, or Dragon, which is a China-exclusive cut-down version of the 5090 to comply with export restrictions. From this clip, we can count at least 5 rows by 5 columns of boxes, at least 2 deep. Interestingly, the retailer mentions future unannounced 5060 and 5060 Ti cards in the video. The end of the clip says that the 5060 Ti and 5060s will have a 650 watt power supply recommendation. Canada Computers stated that it got 0 RTX 5090s. This Japanese retail store reportedly held a lottery to win the chance to buy 50 series GPUs. And while this isn't abnormal practice for big launches, especially there, we've seen it in the past, we did just want to be clear that the prize for the lottery, for the raffle, was to spend thousands of dollars on a GPU. That was the prize. Commerce. The prize was commerce. It's going to be the name of my next book about capitalism. Now, for those who could get orders in today around the world, several were delayed months into the future. We ordered pre-built PCs that might not arrive until April due to the 50 series supply. One of our other machines we bought was a date of sometime between February and March 5th. This guy got an order in, but had Newegg retract it moments later. When we were testing the supply and availability, we tried to buy some from MSI directly, but their store was down all morning. Micro Center Chicago had a reported 60 people in line, according to reports on the internet, but the store allegedly received 0 RTX 5090s. Rockville had 46 people in line yesterday, but also reported 0 5090s. As for NVIDIA's side, its website went down for an extended period of time this morning. The company appears to be scrambling on Reddit to re-inject positivity into the conversation. It's posted about Steam gift codes and has asked users to share their DLSS 4 experiences with their RTX 5090s that they don't have. But as for how much inventory was actually brought to the market, we really only have a few solid indicators right now, and 2 of them are on the boxes that we got for our review units, and also all the other press review units. We went and looked at all their videos. First, the label on our RTX 5090 Founders Edition indicated that it left the Foxconn factory on January 8th, which would have been days after announcement. If NVIDIA has only been making these for a few weeks and shipping them since the 8th, that'd explain a hell of a lot. Ours was also part of a group of 51 cards that were shipped, and we've seen other labels that count up into the mid-hundreds. Actually, Jay's was another one that was part of the 51. We'd assume that those were early reviewer and partner rounds of shipments. We dug through a bunch of other review and unboxing videos and looked closely at everyone's box information. Jay had 10 of 51. We were also part of that group 51. Hardware Unboxed had 17 of 24. IGN had 14 of 140. But we also know of an SI that was part of 140. Long story short, by adding all of these labels together, we came to a known count of RTX 5090 FEs that were shipped out pre-launch of 341 units. The numbers we've seen are 51, 24, 140, 35, and 91. So by this, that's at least 341 Founders Edition units ahead of launch. We also went through and put together a list of as many reviewers as we could find, or unboxers, or whatever content there was out there. We did those both manually by doing our own searching and by checking the Video Cards roundup of reviews. Between those video cards caught and those that we found that they didn't list, we're at a total of 87 units, plus another 8 non-FE units, totaling 95 that we found or that video cards found. So there's almost definitely more, especially foreign language reviewers we wouldn't know of, but that gives an idea for initial quantity. So in other words, it appears that NVIDIA had an amount equal to half of the total of Micro Center's entire supply for launch as review units for 5090s. But as for the quantities, we know that the RTX 4090 was rumored to have shipped 130,000 units within a month of its launch at a time when the 4080 was struggling to move. Scalping's been happening for a while now, and supply has felt short for launches for a while now. It does, however, look to be worse. So back when that 160,000 unit first month, it was actually like the first 3 weeks or something, number was in the rumor mill, we were able to confirm with an NVIDIA employee at the time that the number was roughly accurate. So we know that to be roughly correct. Based on the 5090 stock levels, though, without having much more to go on, it really does seem like it was less than the 4090. It seems like NVIDIA's been rushing it out. And one of the things we want to just think about in this video, even though we can't actually answer it, is why that might be. And we've got some options at the end. One of America's largest system integrators told us that it received a single unit of RTX 5090. It told us that later in the day on launch day, it received another small shipment where it got some more. We can't say how many. Now, another system integrator told us that it received exactly 0 units. And then another of the largest system integrators, these are companies that build PCs but might not be considered an OEM like Dell or HP or something. The third one we spoke with received 20 RTX 5090s that it sold through in pre-built machines in 3 minutes. And it also told us when we asked for context that for the 4090 launch, the same system integrator that got 20 5090s had 30 4090s. Now, this is a data point of a single system integrator, but that SI has grown in the time since, and they're doing more volume, and they had 50% more supply of 4090s at 30 units versus 20 for the 5090s, so that's a big difference. And one of the SIs that we spoke to got around 30 5090s, and it had received a couple hundred 4090s for launch a few years ago, and noted to us that it had much lower volume of 5090s by comparison to the 4090 launch. A couple hundred versus 30 is a pretty big difference, so it really does support a paper launch here. Now, it's easy to talk about all this and look at Reddit posts of people unhappy that they weren't able to get one or they waited in line or whatever, and have it sound like it's just a bunch of gamers complaining about not getting what they want, which is in fact something that the gaming audience, from NVIDIA's perspective, is very good at. NVIDIA has AI GPUs to sell. They have big margin to make on enterprise products. But it does appear to be truly a paper launch for this one. And we have to wonder why NVIDIA chose now to launch the device when it had such limited supply. And we have a few theories. The most obvious is that NVIDIA wanted to get this out the door during CES, when all of its partners could put everything on display and try to get the world media focused on the partner models, drum up interest, and just generate all of that easy media where everyone's in one place. That's an option, certainly. Their next big opportunity for that would have been Computex, unless they did their own event, which certainly NVIDIA does. I mean, March and May have been times that NVIDIA has launched devices in the past, or at least announced them with its GTC event. Another theory we've seen floating around is that NVIDIA might have wanted to get ahead of potential tariffs in the US. Tariffs would be applied at import as the devices arrive. So pushing the launch back, if the devices are already in the US, that wouldn't change whether tariffs are applied or not. They still wouldn't be at least at the same levels that are in the news right now. But launching ahead of potential tariffs might give NVIDIA the opportunity to set the lower of the MSRP options, say it's $1,000 MSRP and $2,000 MSRP, and at least start getting them at the door to establish that MSRP before a potential tariff kicks it all up. And then later, our hands are tied. Hey, those are the MSRPs. If they have to sell for more because they cost more to bring them in, that's not the MSRP change. That's just reality. That's getting a little bit tinfoil hat-y, though. So if AMD were a more serious competitor in the high end, we'd say maybe that's it. Maybe NVIDIA wanted to get in front of AMD and just crush them and flood them out before they could get to market. But AMD several months ago already told everyone that they weren't interested in the high end this generation. So that just doesn't seem like a likely option here. Likewise, NVIDIA probably doesn't care much about Intel's GPUs right now. They're not anywhere close to where NVIDIA is competing. So we think it's more likely to do with something like partner timing and media frenzy for CES, and maybe the tariff situation as the most likely. One major downside to the timing, though, is that NVIDIA has now launched right into Chinese New Year, which is a big deal. We know several factories in the industry that shut down for nearly a month during Chinese New Year. That's mostly because migrant workers from elsewhere in China, like rural China, go back home for an extended holiday. That means that the capacity of board partners to produce more video cards right now is effectively halted, or at least greatly diminished. Now, we spoke with one board partner and we learned that their factory is actually pretty much doing nothing right now, which is normal for part of a major holiday. But what that tells us is there's not going to be supply, at least from that group, being manufactured for several weeks to potentially close to a month until it's back up into full capacity. And that's going to affect the restocking of these devices, aside from whatever's already on boats or on planes, coming to the different markets around the world. MSI actually pushed back its own launch. The company has pushed into February 6th. We were able to speak with someone who works within logistics in the industry and learned that some board partners missed the cutoff to get inventory out prior to major New Year shutdowns. As for what all this means, there's not really a lot of point here other than to point at the launch and say, paper launch, which it does actually seem to be. The concept of launching a sheet of paper and saying these are the specs of the product, we don't have any. That's kind of what this is right now. And all we could really say is that it's frustrating. It's frustrating for consumers, and it's frustrating for everyone who's worked on reviewing the cards too, because it kills the momentum completely, and people will be rightfully frustrated with the low supply, and you just kind of go back into hibernation, especially because with Chinese New Year, it could be several months before retailers are really able to get a steady supply of things. And that's something we've already seen with the system integrators where they're delayed out into May for some of the orders, or April for one of ours. So supply for 5080 seemed to be better, but really, it's just not a compelling product to buy. You probably shouldn't buy one. That's not to say $2,000 on a 5090 is much better, but at least there's more use cases for the 32 gigabytes of VRAM. We'd also wager that NVIDIA is struggling with yields right now. The 50 series and the 40 series use the same node. Back in September, there were rumors, including this one via Extreme Tech, that the RTX 4090 was ceasing production. That purged the market of the 40 series, but also now indicates that NVIDIA has only been producing RTX 50 series silicon in any large volume for a few months, as it had to get the 40 series out of the way first. Now, we're not convinced that delaying the launch into February would have really helped here, because they'd still be within that sort of 2 to 4 week period of serious slowdown in the manufacturing sector, where another couple weeks of delay, it might have allowed more shipments to arrive, but it probably wouldn't drastically impact the manufacturing capacity. And so that might have pushed them into, say, March for an alternative to this particular date for launch. And at that point, they'd still be ramping supply. And March would have put NVIDIA between the two biggest events in the industry, the CES and then Computex in May or June. It's May this year. And they probably didn't want to be between them. So it looks like NVIDIA, its strategy may have been to maximize short-term coverage and just get something out there, but they are also sort of competing with themselves in that NVIDIA has big money to make in enterprise data center and AI these days, just like AMD with its EPYC CPUs, and the 40 series was sort of blocking it. And so by ramping down the 40 series and running out of inventory in, say, mostly December, while that helped NVIDIA to stop people from purchasing an older card that would compete with its new one, like it struggled with the 1080 Ti when the 2080 launched, it was able to push that problem out of the way, but then all of that demand shifted to the 50 series, and it just looks like NVIDIA was not prepared for it, or maybe more appropriately stated, they knew exactly what the problem was going to be, and they had other reasons to not care about that problem. Really what we're saying here is just this whole launch is kind of weird. NVIDIA built a decent amount of goodwill with the 5090, especially with the FE cooler. They made some changes that people were excited about, and then they started destroying that goodwill with the 5080 reviews, and then they totally destroyed it with the launch. So their strategy appears to have been, let's get people excited and then slowly begin chipping away at the excitement, and then we'll just crush the excitement entirely. Not to get too much into the commentary of it, but there's a chance that this kind of hurts long-term consumer interest, at least for people who were excited about it, and then now they're looking at it like, maybe I'll just like wait 6 months next time or something instead. So there could be a long-term impact from this approach. But let's be real, that impact probably won't affect NVIDIA until they have some serious competition. And so at the end of all this, we don't have any special privileged insight. There's a couple conversations with different people in the industry here, but nothing that special. We mostly just dug through what was going on, tried to understand the situation, and tried to buy some of the cards ourselves for the reviews that we're working on, and it gave us the not that unique insight based on the internet that there's not many of these cards out there. So that's it. I don't know. I mean, that's the report. We wanted to compile some facts, do some digging, maybe find some kind of light in the disappointing low supply launch that this is, and figure out what the industry was saying, and figure out if they effectively got just efficiently scalped. Like, was it okay supply, but they just evaporated as scalpers? They're that good now? Or was it actually low supply? It appears to be actually low supply, and more than just a bot and scalper situation. Actually, there are some comments that we saw online where people signed up for bot services to try and snipe the cards, not necessarily for scalping, but for themselves, and they didn't get one. So it's like when you're paying the bots to defeat the bots, but there's no supply, does the tree really fall in the forest and make a sound? Nobody knows. That was a mixed metaphor. Ignore I said that. It's to stop the voices.
I wonder if this can play Crisis. Only gamers know that joke.
Anyway, appears there wasn't a lot of supply. Yeah, it sucks, but that's the situation. The report isn't like that special. We're just kind of confirming what people know, but you know, hey, we dug into it, and yes, it looks like most of the world had very few of these, and even in the US, where NVIDIA allocates a huge amount of its supply, it was pretty low. I mean, for Micro Center to be in the hundreds of units for 5090s, and they're in a lot of the country now, that tells you something. So anyway, that's it for this one. Thanks for watching. Go to store.gamersnexus.net if you'd like to support us directly, like by buying some of our t-shirts, our toolkits, or our soldering and project mats, which are made out of a high temperature resistant silicone. Or you can go to patreon.com/gamersnexus to throw a few bucks our way. Thanks for watching. We'll see you all next time.
It was too much. Last night I said, this is too much. This morning I said, this is too much. And now I realize it's too much. 兄弟啦